miles and stayed over. I went to Lincolndale, which was a Catholic school, was on exhibition there, and stayed a week. Went down to Mount Kisco and stayed a week.
How fast would you go over the road?
About 2 miles an hour.
2 miles an hour.
Yeah, we left Savin Rock, New Haven one time.
This is walking the cattle?
Walking the cattle
Driving them.
at 6 o'clock in the morning. We got home at 9 o'clock at night. We was on the road 15 hours, and we had gone around 30 miles. Yeah, nowadays, of course, well, I drove trucks, and as far as driving it over the road, there came the day when there were a nuisance, you know, and police would I was going through Hartford one time and asked me what I was up to, and I said, "Mind your business. I mind my business. Why don't you mind yours?" And I knew what I up to, because they were trying to get us, but they didn't have any law to cover it. We had as much right as they had.
You had the right to drive the oxen?
We had the right. And,
cars were getting in the way, weren't they?
Oh, sure. Yeah. You drive cattle on the road, you could feel your pants like the car going by. Ox, if he threw his head to knock the horns, you know, knock the flies off, and you dodged from the horn, but you dodged in front of a car. You didn't have much leeway, you know.
As a child, you must have learned the discipline of farming very well. What other things did you do?
Well, we weren't at quite the typical farm. My father owned that farm for all his life, and he plowed 2 acres to improve it. We didn't plow, but the trouble was in New England, there was an article, and I forget who wrote it, Plowman's Folly. And a lot of people did a lot of plowing in New England. They probably have done better because the erosion, you know. You plow a hill and you get it back into grass. And when Mr. Roosevelt came into, and he put some programs there, he paid farmers, the agriculture, to put land from plowland into grassland, and right there, following my father's footsteps a lot. My job, you know, I was at Wachusma during the war, and I had put 15 or 20 acres of plowland back into grassland, and of course, Mr. Crocker could get along. If he didn't get paid for it, wasn't going hungry that night anyway, but for a poor farmer, you know, he would have got paid. And what pleased me was that I had done something that the government thought was important, but I'd done it 2 or 3 years before they thought of it.
And you learned that from your father?
Yeah.
That you don't plow up a lot of land and let it erode?
The trouble, they wouldn't get the stones off, you know, and they put the land down in bad shape, and they'd have a lot of erosion.
As a youngster, though, what were your jobs around the farm? You drove the oxen over the road, and you showed. Did you have to cut firewood? And
oh yeah, we go down the woods and take a load of manure up on the hill and spread it. Go down the woods and get a load of wood, and by that time it was short time, you know. And I think of these people that have these health setups. You do that and do chores night and morning. One barn was a half a mile away, and the time I got ready.
What do you mean? The barn was a half a mile from the house?
Well, we had a barn that we called African barn because it was owned by some colored people one time. So when we were kids, you know, and we had company, like my cousins from Danbury, Connecticut, they'd go home and tell their kids they had gone to Africa, and we called that Africa barn. It was just like a back of the hand. It never occurred to us that it was unusual to call it Africa, but it was like
half a mile away.
Half a mile away. But the point was whether the buildings were there, and the buildings, it was a very old building, but the barn was where the hay was. So it was the difference between walking mile each way to do the chores, or where the hay was, or drawing the hay to the building. The buildings were right where the hay was there. So haying was very, very easy. And of course, when you didn't have bale hay and you didn't have tractors and trucks, a little distance was important. So what we lost doing chores, walking back and forth, we made up hay time. One kind of balanced the other. But,
And what kind of rigs did you use to hay, to cut the hay? And
well, the mowing machine, way back, well, they had a mowing machine. My father tells about riding the mowing machine in his father's lap with a pair of oxen, a mowing machine, and he could sit on the mowing machine and guide them with a whip to mow. Which, you know.
Now, did you have tractors? And
oh no,
no,
you didn't have tractors. Even in Princeton, Mr. Crocker, he wanted to keep it old, so he bought a pair of oxen for my dad, and of course he got a big kick out of his farming with oxen, you know, and his city cousin said that was an excursion to go to a place where they didn't have tractors.
Did you use horses at all to draw any of the equipment?
Oh yeah, we use horses.
Yeah.
But not tractors. Soon after I left, I went back there and they were loaded with tractors or something. No, when I got out of that place and took a job, I didn't know a whole lot about tractors. I tried to cover it up a little, but I got away.
And
I had to learn about tractors. And
what you knew about farming made up for it,
yeah,
I'm sure. Yeah. In your schooling early on, you went to, was it Barrett School?
Barrett District School.
Barrett District. That would be like elementary, or?
Well, I think in the old-fashioned times in Connecticut that every town had districts, and there were school districts. I don't know, but there were districts other than school, whether representing, maybe if somebody ran for office, they'd run from a district, it seems like that. I'm not too familiar, but the thing about that is that everybody nowadays, you know, takes for granted that high schools have been forever, and that is not true. High schools are not, I don't know when they started, but back, there was a time when if you wanted to go to college, you had to go to an academy, well, like Groton School.
What you went to was what, Booth Free School?
Well, Booth Free School was a high school, but it wasn't listed as a high school. So I left Barrett District School my 7th grade, and it was, I was a 7th grader, but I wasn't a 6th grade because they had a superintendent that said we would grade the schools. Then I went to Barrett District, went to Barrett
Booth Free?
High School, and that wasn't scheduled. So my last year, I was a senior, but I never was a junior because they didn't have it listed. There wasn't them. So out of 12 years, I was listed in the 7th grade and the 12th grade.
Yeah.
But I lost a lot of school because of the war. I stayed home. I think we had 3 terms instead of 2 semesters then.
And your brother Percy was off with Sergeant York.
Yeah, they, you see, most people don't realize how fast a family can just disintegrate each other. My brother goes to war, my sister gets married, my mother goes in the hospital, and there's Dad and I left alone, keeping bachelor's home a little, and then 1919, my brother comes home on Memorial Day. I graduate from high school, and my mother dies.
That was in August?
in August, and I go, and here's my dad keeping the whole fires burning all the way through. One time with me, and then the next time with my brother.
Come the fall of 1919, that's when you went off to
Yeah.
University of Connecticut?
That's right. But in between then, in my teens, it was haying and bringing in wood, and we didn't do a lot of cropping. We spread the manure and bushed the land and kept the fences up and so forth. Yeah, my dad, one time when I was at school, Prof. Garrick's secretary said, go in, Prof is in class, but take a note to him. He'd had an important notice over the telephone that he should get. As I walked out, here I'm a little freshman, you know, and unaccounted. And this was a senior class, but Prof. Garrick was nice enough to say to his class, Paul's father has the cleanest farm in the state of Connecticut. So I walked in low, but I walked out 7 foot tall. No, I've had a lot of nice things happen to me. You were talking about work and discipline, you know. When I went with my first job, I was there, after 2 weeks, Mr. Crocker said, no insinuation of the guy that owned it before, but this is the way I was brought up. The farm machinery was no chalk line, you know, but as good as my eye could be was from Lebanon Square, you know. Said that pleased him because he said previously it looked like it had been blown in the corner of the field with a hurricane, you know. And after a couple of years, he said to me one time, I've got 1,200 men working for me, but you're the hardest working man of the 1,200, and you do it with a smile on your face. And I said, well, Mr. Crocker, I guess it's about time I appreciate my father's discipline. And it was discipline, there was no fooling. But it was a good thing, you know, and it worked out. And he was fair, but he was pretty strict, you know.
Well, we might record here that this is September of 1990, and I was fortunate enough this spring to go down with you to Wachusett Meadow Farm, and that is such a beautiful farm. And we can see the results of the stone walls that you've laid and the barns that you've built.
Yeah, that was a nice experience. You see, that job. Well, Rosemary Crocker was 5 years old, that's Mr. Crocker's granddaughter, and she and I are big buddies now. A lot of nice things happened when she was growing up and so forth. But she was I went to her house not too many years ago to write the history of what she was meant for. And I got out of the car and she came over and gave me a big hug and so forth. It was a nice relationship between employee and employer that you don't get in industry, you know. And I went in her house and she showed me an album, a family album, just concerning the farm. It had nothing to do with their home in Fitchburg. But this family album, and it was a kind of an unusual situation. I think I was in the family album more than the Crockett were. And I said that to Rosemary one time. And she said, Paul, I said I always felt a little guilty. I had the fun and of developing this herd. And your grandfather paid all the bills, and he paid the money and I had the fun. And she said, well, Paul, if it hadn't, maybe I'm repeating myself, if it hadn't been for you, it wouldn't have been a Wachusett Meadow Farm, and you can't be much kinder than I. But to repay that kindness, I'll show you a write-up of Professor Gargus, which he was considered the top livestock man in New England, and but let's see, I was leading up some. I lost the trail a little bit, but anyway, I'll tell you. Rosemary, you know, she'd been so kind, and our relationship been so nice. I ran a dance for her, and their father and mother couldn't take care of her, and they had called us up, and we were her chaperone at the dance and things. It was little more than just employee-employer, you know. And I said to her one time, and I was true, I said, Rosemary, our relationship has been so great that you're the second most important person in my life, and second to Professor Garrigus. So I don't know how long Prof's been dead, 15 or 20 years, but and we've had a nice association since then. So one time I called her up and I said, Rosemary, you used to be the second most important person in my life outside of my family. Now that Professor Professor Garrigus has died, you're number one. And we had a big laugh over that, and she appreciated that. But we had a marvelous situation with those people personally.
In Virginia?
In Virginia, we anyway, from the health point of view, one time we invited the butler and the cook, who was man and wife, to play cards with us. But they downgraded the Crockers so badly that it made such a miserable evening for us that we just never did invite them back. And because, as I've said before, these people will bond scribe and say, yes, Mr. So-and-so, and no, Mrs. So-and-so. But as soon as they leave the house and the dust hasn't settled on the road, they're calling all their dirty names and think I'm the cook. No loyalty at all. I don't know what there is about it. It's a little different. There's a lot of difference between being see, I never considered myself a servant. I was an employee, and I had a job as a manager. Servant situation is a little different, you know. They, I don't know just how to explain it, but anyway, but anyway, Mr. Gracie, you know, I was saying to him, he said to me, Paul, one thing about you, and I talk with a lot of managers, but you have more loyalty to your employees than anybody I ever known, and that made me feel very proud. I worked for the people you could be loyal to, you know, and I just want to brought up that way.
I think the loyalty is shown too, in that at the University of Connecticut, you did some work with the farm there, and earned the respect of the professors there, that they would send you these boys to work for you and then be placed.
Yeah, I went back in '46 and worked with students there and got them some jobs to it at the, I forget. Anyway, one of the jobs is still holds, and it's if you pick out, you know, you think of employers picking out the right employee, but as an employee, I think I picked out the right employer. I had 8 jobs offered me, and I took the first one I was offered because Mr. Crocker offered it to me. And he said to me, I'd like to have you make it a lifetime job now.
This is when you came from the University of Connecticut?
Yeah.
And it turned out it lasted
23 years.
23 years.
And, but the thing is, you know, Prof. Garrigus had given me such a great recommendation that Mr. Crocker, even though I wasn't 7 foot tall and so forth, decided that after meeting me, and we went up to the farm, and he played a little trick on me, I think. He said, I think that ewe is lame there, and he pointed out. And I went in and grabbed her and set her up and expected her foot. Now, I did it professionally. Handling sheep, the only way you grab them, if they're back two, you grab them by the flank. If they're head two, you grab them under the throat. If you throw them, you pick them up right off the floor. If you don't, you can't break a leg, and set them down. And I did that, and I guess that might have been the reason I got the job for it.
When you left the University of Connecticut, you were offered several jobs.
Yeah.
Through the professor there, and
the university in Georgetown, Connecticut, they had a farm that belonged to the, and Prof. Gerges had offered me that job with Devon's, and I was all set to take it, but I went in and saw Prof one day, and I would have been a herdsman, and I was going to work for a man named Bigelow, and his father and he and my father were competitors in the show field, you know, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to be working for a competitor. My dad, I was afraid he was going to do a bad job on it. But anyway, so Prof kind of laughed, and he said, well, I've just received 3 applications for a job. Prof was the kind of people, kind of person that people came to, you know. So there was the shorthorn job in Massachusetts, and Hereford job in New Hampshire, and a Angus job up in Maine. But when Mr. Crocker said he'd like to have me take the job, make a lifetime job out of it, I'd been pretty brainless not to have the same feeling for me that he'd had for him as he had for me. So it you can't get a job much quicker than that.
so
That afternoon.
That's when you moved over to Princeton, Mass. And
yes, I moved into a hotel there first. Had this was was kind of funny, you know. I was hired out for the first day of July, and the first day of July came on a Sunday. So I lived I think about 1.75 miles the farm from town. I just got off cross-country team, and 1.75 miles wasn't too much, you know. So I jogged over, and nobody's there in the morning, jogged back and had dinner. Jogged over in the afternoon, and quite a few, they didn't have, they came up every Sunday, but every once in a while they'd have a big family party, and that place.
At the Crockers?
At the Crockers, just loaded, you know. Now I can see Mr. Crocker up in the field there, and we're wandering around. And I walked up and I said, hi, Mr. Crocker. He says, I don't quite remember me. You know, people, they can kind of work their way in on a situation, you know. And I said, well, my name is Paul Beardsly, and I hope there's no misunderstanding. And then he laughed. And but the situation was, when I took the job, I was covered with poison ivy, number 1. Number 2, I had better clothes on. So to see me with work clothes on and without poison ivy was quite a change, you know. I told you about the poison ivy, but that's the story all goes.
Now, the reason it was so easy for you to jog back and forth to this hotel and up to the Wachusett Meadow Farm, at the University of Connecticut, you were involved with track and cross country. You were.
I was on the first cross country team they ever had, and we ran against Rhode Island. We didn't do too well. I finished. I didn't get my second win too good. It's not unusual, you know, to get nausea. These pro basketball players, so sometimes before it. So I wasn't doing too good around 4 or 5 miles. All of a sudden I got my second win, and I came down the finish in there in like like I was on the 100-yard track team, and I tell you, old Coach Daly, he was a rough old boy. He was with the New York AC. All the dirty names he called me, I wouldn't say in front of my dog. What he was mad at, he said, if you had that much pep, why didn't you use it up 3-4 months? He couldn't have been more right, but I wasn't feeling that good. And I learned my lesson. I never came in off a cross-country team, so I used it up. I came all out of breath.
Used it up when it should be.
I used it up when it should be.
Yeah.
But what was kind of funny, when I was at Groton, I had a good friend that was, I had a physical director of Groton, of Lawrence Academy. He and I were big buddies. And we was after the mail one time in October, November. And I worried more about being, I was in my 40s then, I guess, about being old than I did when I was in my 80s. I said, I don't think I'll ever run in any more cross-country teams. And he says, I don't think I will either. And he said, where did you run? And I said, for Connecticut. And he said, well, I ran for Rhode Island. And I said, he said, I ran against Connecticut in 1922. And I said, well, I ran against Rhode Island in 1922. It's so unusual, you know, for two people to know each other and ran against each other. And no, but I've had a lot of those things happen. They're a lot of fun.
They sure are. At the University of Connecticut, Joe Pritchard took care of the...
he was the shepherd.
The shepherd.
He was shepherd and herdsman. He had cattle and sheep.
And was it 1922 that he asked you to go to the national championships, the national show in Chicago?
Well, that was Prof asked me to go with Joe. Yeah, he called me up 9 or 10 o'clock at night and said, well, he was doing it for me too. Now, this was another nice thing that Prof Gerges did for me. Even I was going out there to work. He said, if you get, give me $50 to pay for something, there's going to be board and all, you know. If Joe had needed me real badly, well, he'd been paying me, but what Prof was doing was getting me that trip, and I'm paying for it a little and helping Joe too. And that was, you know, I'd never been west of Mississippi before, and on the way into Chicago, I sat up and, you know, quite an experience. And as big as Eastern States was, that Chicago show, you're used to enough to the horse shows, but they had over 100 head in some of those classes. And that was the World Series of the Milk and Shorthorn.
That's where the Prince of Wales showed his cattle.
Yeah. Oh, that was a big show. It had a lot of history.
And another thing I remember at the University of Connecticut, you belonged to the fraternity, and you used a pair of oxen to dig the first cellar hole for the first fraternity house. And that was my fraternity. Of course, I drove oxen all 4 years at the university. Some of them were some that my father had sold to them, and that was back in the days when when Prof Gerges called me. He was always calling me up late at night to do something. Will you take me down to Gurleyville to meet the train at 6 o'clock and 10 below zero? And will you go down to Willimantic on a Sunday afternoon, it's raining, and take my son's bicycle down? And I was too poor to have a bicycle, and down the hill, and I didn't know how to work the brake, and I passed all the white Cadillacs going down the hill because I could not. So, but unload them and drive them up in the rain and the dark, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, you know. And so when people used to say to me, Paul, you have advantage over the rest of us because you got Prof Gerges on your side, but I figured I did a few things to get him on You
my
won
side.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not.